You are watching and listening to Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV on YouTube and your favourite podcasts.
Hi everybody, Jerry Taggart here. Now be sure to watch Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV by subscribing on YouTube and following them on social media for all the latest Leicester City news and information. Come on you foxes!
Back of the net.
You're watching Leicester Till I Die TV.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform
Or ask your smart speaker.
to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like, follow, and join in now.
Right, Chris.
All right there, all right at the back. How are you doing? How the devil are you all? It has been absolutely ages since I saw you. It's been about 54 minutes. Got changed, and so glad. As somebody a lot funnier and a lot better than me once said, you're so much better than last week's audience. But thanks very much for coming back. It's the second show of the night, and it is the X on the bit. I nearly said it. Nearly said it. You should not mix up beach and pitch. I'll tell you. X on the pitch. I need to go and clean my teeth. This is where you can find us at Leicester Till I Die.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform
Or ask your smart speaker.
to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like, follow, and join in now.
I nearly said it. I knew 1 week I would, and it's taken me to week 4 to nearly drop the clanger. Beach and pitch, like I say, 2 words you should not get mixed up. Julian, Reader's Digest's women's page top totty. How are you this week?
Very good, Chris. Thank you, especially after the weekend.
Yes, what a good result. And I hope you mean the football match, not putting your wife in a skip.
Definitely not. Well, that would have been nice too.
Let's not go there. I'm more worried about you than me because you're there with her. But yeah, I mean, it was amazing. And a couple of topics we're going to cover tonight, but I think they're going to take us quite most of the night. So a few down on normal. And of course, if anybody's got any questions, get them in on the chat. And then if we've got some time left at the end, we will certainly put those to Julian. But this is what's coming up on tonight's show. Indeed. So let us start with Mr. Brendan Rodgers, our manager. I mean, everybody had the honeymoon period, and we were all pleased for the Newcastle fans that they'd finally got Mike Ashley out. Although, of course, hindsight being the wonderful thing that it is, his lack of spending means they can go and spend a lot more now than they probably would have been able to because of the fair play rules. But within a couple of days, everybody's players are being linked with Newcastle, and it's not going to happen because I think they've got some very sensible owners coming in. But I think Steve Bruce's time there is numbered. I think he's on his way out. They've let him have his 1,000th game, and of course Brendan was one that was linked, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was always going to be, I think, because obviously you've got Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City, their managers aren't going to go to Newcastle. Spurs new manager in place. He's not going to go there. You come down the list a little bit, and then you get to little old Leicester, and Brendan Rodgers, whose reputation has been enhanced dramatically in the last several years with Celtic, and then coming here in the great job that he's done with Leicester. So I think if any decent job comes up, he's always going to get linked. And I suppose it's where he thinks he is in his career and what he thinks he's done at Leicester so far and what he thinks he can achieve further at Leicester. And I said on the show last week, I thought it'd be absolutely crackers to leave the club right now, because he's held in such high regard by everyone involved with Leicester City. Why would you turn your back on that? Into going into something that you don't really know what to expect. With all that money to spend, comes a huge amount of pressure, and whether he's ready to do that or not. Hopefully we're not going to find out, and it seems that's the case.
Yeah. Terry says good evening. Hi Terry, how the devil are
Hi,
you?
Terry.
He's got his question ready for you later, so I'd be very afraid. And Rob, good evening, Rob. How the devil are you? Says thanks for the 6-iron, Julian, but it's a ladies. That's what your wife was doing in the skip. Looking for golf clubs. That's what it is. Oh, I mean, it is a sign, and we should be pleased that it's only if you've got good players, and it's only if you've got a manager that's doing well, that they're going to be linked with a move away. If they're doing badly, they're not going to be linked, are they?
Absolutely. And we have, I think we'll go on more about the performance later, but that performance really got us back to where we were last season. And probably, like I say, we sort of over-expect at times, but that was probably where we think they should be, this season. Yeah. And after a difficult start, it was nice to see not just the result, but the performance, the way they went about themselves, the way they reacted to setbacks within the 90 minutes. And it was just fantastic all around. And he is going to, our players will be linked. I mean, even Vardy at his age will still be linked with clubs because of, what he's doing. And obviously Maddison's in the England setup and Barnes is coming through. And, the list goes on and on and on. So we have got that dilemma, but it's better to have that dilemma than the dilemma where no one really gives two hoots about your manager or any of your players.
I remember being on a chat watching the Newcastle fans going on about the takeover, and this is the day it happened, and somebody said, right, let's go out and buy Vardy now. I mean, it started straight away. But I think what I liked about this with Brendan is quite often when players and managers are linked with a move away, they keep very quiet. For example, Tielemans has not come out and said whether he's stopping, whether he's going. He patted the badge on Saturday, but we all know that means sweet FA, if we're honest. But for Brendan to actually come out and say, I'm very fortunate. I've got a great chief executive and a director of football I have a close relationship with, and a group of players that I really enjoy working with. He replied when he was asked if the Leicester project was his only concern. He said, 100%. I've got a contract until 2025. I absolutely love being there. You could not really say a bigger no if he hadn't sent a telegram to St James's Park.
No, and quite rightly so. I think it's great that he came out. Obviously, it's a sigh of relief, for the fans that he's committed to the club. But then you can turn that on its head, and if he was keeping his cards close to his chest, that'd be the point where maybe the hierarchy would start looking for an alternative to him. So things like that can backfire on you in football. And I think you have to be positive in what you're doing and come out and tell everybody what you want to do, and that's exactly what he's done. Great for the club. I mean, everyone at the club will be absolutely delighted that he's said that, and we can all relax and get on with the journey.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can never say never in football, unfortunately. But like I say, to come out and say that, he says we have an infrastructure here that allows us to look to compete. So as long as they don't want to move me, then I'm very happy being here. And like I said, he couldn't have said more, and I think that's the good thing. But he would be silly, and we mentioned this last week, and you said yourself we would be silly, wouldn't we, to move him on? For him to move, I mean.
Yeah, it would. I mean, is it a club? Is it a big club now? We're a big club now. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I know we can talk about the top six and what have you, but we've been there and thereabouts for quite a few years. Obviously, we won the league and the cup successes and European football. So, but is it a club where the chairman's not saying to him, he expects him to win the league? He expects Champions League. It feels like we've got a chairman who's very realistic in his expectations and realizes that things aren't going to happen overnight, which is some other chairmans in the league ought to take a leaf out of Top's book, because it's a great way for a manager to develop and to grow and have confidence in everything he's doing, rather than questioning himself because he's wondering what everyone else at the club is thinking about him. He's thinking, is he made the right move? If he picks this player, what's the chairman think? And all of a sudden the doubts can come into managers' minds when things particularly aren't going well for them. And, we'll come on to that, I suppose, with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer shortly. But he's in a position where I'm sure he must feel the confidence of the hierarchy at the club. And that must be fantastic for a manager who's at a top Premier League club to have this opportunity to develop and grow with the club. And if we got in the top four, we'd be, it's not an overachievement, but it's a fantastic achievement nonetheless.
Yes.
But we don't expect it. We know it's tough. We know that Chelsea have come back stronger since Tuchel, took over. What are Spurs going to do? They've sort of found the form of it. So have Arsenal. It's such a difficult league, and we seem to be more realistic on what we expect of our football club than I think most of the fans do of theirs.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more. I think you look at a lot of fans have been saying to me, Man United fans, Tottenham fans, etc., saying, if you don't finish fifth, it's going to be a disappointment. And I'm saying, but it's not. That's what you don't understand. For Tottenham, it may be a disappointment. For Man United, if they don't finish top four, it will be underachieving. But only because of what your expectations are. A lot of these Man United fans, because of the success they've had, probably weren't even born pre-Alex Ferguson, let alone know how, I upset a few Man United fans the other day by saying that, I can remember when Liverpool were the biggest team in the country. And you think I'd sort of, personally shot Sir Alex Ferguson with a gun, but they were Liverpool, in the 70s, early 80s, were the biggest team. They were winning everything out there and dominating Europe. And Man United couldn't get near to it. And then Liverpool had to go 13 years before they won it again. And I think Liverpool, whether it's 13 years or not, but you can't expect just because you've been successful to stay successful.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a lot at the back end of last season, Chris, and it was to do with why Leicester aren't considered a top six club despite the performances and the standings in the last few seasons. And we talked a lot about the history that clubs have, and we're just making our history, and maybe in 10 years time we will be considered a top six club because we'll have done it that many times in the last 10 years. And that's the problem you've got with the so-called bigger clubs, is their history is of being at the top, and then therefore it's bred into the fans that that's where they should be, that's where they deserve to be, and that's where they've got a right to be. But we all know, the game of football, doesn't serve that up every week, and especially as the game gets harder, and teams can make life more difficult for the top teams, and results aren't always a foregone conclusion. That isn't the case. And I think, are they realistic about that? And I think they're probably not at the moment. And I know that we are, and I know that if we finished 7th or 8th, fans would be disappointed. And I think the thing with going back to Brendan is that if he finished 7th or 8th or 9th for the next 2 or 3 years, then he would be having to look over his shoulder, because they'd be looking to bring someone in who could push the club forward. But what I was saying earlier is that in the meantime, he has got time to build and develop this and make it into a top club.
Indeed. Anthony, thanks for your comment. We'll come on to that a bit later when we move on to that subject. Hayden, good evening, sir. How the devil are you? It does, yeah, exactly. I mean, people said to me last season, oh, you finished 5th after being, 4th for so long, and how did you feel? Was it a bad season? And I'm saying I wasn't pulling my hair out. I was disappointed. As a fan, you do get disappointed because we were in the top 4, but we still got Europa League football. We're still in Europe. And for Leicester, that is brilliant. And it is all about, like you say, expectations. And you said if we finished 7th or 8th, it would be disappointing, but it wouldn't be the end of the world for us.
No, and talking about that as well, again, last season we had all the injuries, and I think when we sort of get a little bit carried away with ourselves is at the point where we're dealing with these injuries and we're still getting the results and we're still in the top 4, and you just keep thinking as the players come back we're actually going to be stronger, and then come the end of the season we can have that last push and make sure that we finish in that top 4. And unfortunately it wasn't to be, but it was a tough long season. I thought they were superb, and at the end of the day, going back 20 years, the expectation hopefully was to finish outside the bottom 3. So, we've come a long way from then. And indeed, the club has certainly come in, leaps and bounds from those days. But, anywhere above relegation 20 years ago was like an absolute result and the fans were delighted. But it just shows how far the club's come when we're disappointed with just missing out on 4th.
I know we have to sort of take that pinch ourselves to think we are disappointed with 5th really but you've got to also remember that other clubs are also fighting for that 5th position. You've got Everton, they've got the players, they've now got a good manager. West Ham are doing it for a 2nd season. Villa have got the money to go out and do it now, so we can't say that 5th is necessarily going to be nailed on for us.
No, there's no given rights at all. West Ham sort of finished so strongly last season, especially when they took Lingard on loan. They were a tough match for anyone. Like you say, your Villas, Spurs are sort of coming back into it. Arsenal have recovered after a poor start. Brentford look like a team that can cause anybody problems, and we'll probably feel a bit aggrieved on Saturday. I think it was against Chelsea. So, there's all these teams that come into this mix, and you can talk about easily without thinking a top 10 strong teams, and you don't deserve to be there. You've really got to earn it. And unfortunately for us, we've not started well. We've changed things around. We've got a few new faces in. 1 or 2 things don't seem to have worked, and we find ourselves in a difficult position. But I think, as you alluded to last week, maybe we might be a little bit better at chasing the pack than seeing the pack off. And we don't know yet. But I think Saturday was a big result, and I think the next few fixtures will be interesting to see whether it was, were Man United poor or were we good, which I know we're going to talk about later. But it was a nice result against I won't say a strong team, I'll say a team of strong individuals. But to go and win in the way we did, in the manner we did, when we get the late equaliser and we come back and score 2 late on, and Vardy's running his socks off well into injury time. Everything about it just tick boxes, and I can't remember anyone. I couldn't pick anyone out who had a bad game at all. It was just a real good team performance. So hopefully this is the turning point, and hopefully we can kick on from there.
It was hard for the guy that does my man of the match to pick one, to be honest with you. But I always said that when we got Brendan Rodgers, and I'm going to wonder whether I got this wrong, but I never saw it. And I'm sorry to say good evening to Scott. Thanks for joining us. That it was always going to be not a long-term project. And when I mean long, I'm talking about Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger long. But I think I read somewhere he's the 4th most highly paid manager in the Premier League. Certainly in the top 10, but I believe he's in the top 5. So, if he's going to go, it's not necessarily going to be about money. Could you see him still being here maybe in 10, 12 years and carrying on that dynasty? Or if he doesn't, because with Leicester, we know we're probably not going to be a Man United, and we're not going to win you never know, but we're not going to win the Premier League as many times, sort of thing. But could this be a really, really long-term partnership?
It could be, but I think that, if he was here in 10 years' time, it would mean that we'd been super successful in those 10 years, because that's part and parcel of everything that that's about the Premier League and about the nature of the football business. So fingers crossed he is, because it would mean we've done ever so well. I don't see it these days. There's not many managers, even the more successful ones. It'd be interesting to see how long Pep stays at Man City, Jurgen at, Liverpool. They're doing a fantastic job, and you can, they look like they're ingrained into the club, and you can see them there forever. But they've got different opinions of of where they want to be and what they want to manage and what they want to achieve. So it's always difficult. But I just think in the short term, definitely he's in the right place. I think he knows that 100%. And I've said before, it could be a complete mug for me if he left, because of what he's got, what he's surrounded by, the facilities, everything about the club, the fans, the infrastructure of everything, and he has put, or is putting, I think, a decent squad together. I mean, in our squad, there's probably more youth than in the other top squads, but if you get the right youth in, that's not a problem at all.
As Alex Ferguson proved, you can win things with youth, despite what Alan Hansen said. I mean, sticking on the topic of managers, because like you say, obviously, you go for the manager to a club and, you want to do well, knowing probably at the back of your mind that if you are sacked, you're still going to get a good payoff anyway. But like you say, with Brendan, he hasn't got the pressure that the new manager of Newcastle is going to be under, because, he's going to have expectations that are absolutely off this planet, and whoever takes over from Ollie, they're going to say, well, come on now, I mean, the pressure on Ollie this season to perform, it must be unbelievable, because he's been given the players. He's probably got one of the best squads, if not the best squad in the Premier League, and he's got to win something. And then you look at, bless him, Claudio Ranieri comes a call in again. Doesn't seem to last anywhere longer than two seasons. Signs up to Watford. He couldn't keep Fulham up. And don't get me wrong, obviously I love Claudio to bits. I honestly do, but he's not the manager for a relegated Watford. I think they're going to be a relegated team.
Yeah, I think as a manager, going into Watford, you first of all, you have to assess the squad before you even dare set foot in the place. And I watched the highlights of the game on Saturday, and some of the mistakes for the goals were, so basic that I could imagine walking off the pitch and getting the hairdryer for, some of the errors that some of the players made. They were gifting goals to a fantastic Liverpool team who don't need goals gifting to them. So I mean, for Claudio in his position, he really, really quickly needs to find a really good core, spine of the team and get them organised, which they didn't look, and maybe make some brave decisions. I don't know if they've got any youth or younger players coming through or any squad players, but it just looked awful. And I think 4, maybe 5 players looked like they really shouldn't have been on that pitch on Saturday. And that for me is absolutely a massive thing for him. And that's something that I'm sure he has assessed. He knows a lot more than me, but it just felt like a new manager comes in. You expect that up in effort, the crowd, everything, and it just fell flat on its face. And it's not often that you see that.
Yeah, Scott says there, I think the only time Brendan he decides to go would be in 3 to 4 years, when the likes of Man City or Liverpool or possibly Newcastle are looking. I do honestly think maybe Man City and Newcastle, but I think as a manager, he would look, and I alluded to this before, I think he'd look at it and go, okay, they're offering me this much, but when you get to a certain point, there's only so much money, and it just becomes, money that's going to be sat there. But he would surely say, like, what am I expected to do at these clubs? If I'm keeping Leicester in that top 6, 7, 8 position season on season, they're going to be happy and winning the odd cup here and there and getting regular European football. But and I don't think Liverpool would have him back, to be honest with you. But Man City, Chelsea or Newcastle, the expectation on his shoulders, like we just said with Ranieri, the expectation for him to keep them up, I don't think he'll be there till the end of the season. It's not everything money, is it?
It's certainly not, and it's a lot. I always think about players who leave a club to go to another club, and it's your players who say, "I want to play for Real Madrid," and they go to Real Madrid, and it all goes pear shaped, and you think, I would never envisage myself, going to a club just because of its fantastic, history that it's got. It's got to suit you as a player, and the manager's got to suit you as a player. So, the money that they earn these days, they don't have to worry about anything financially after they finish playing football. So that shouldn't, it shouldn't be a consideration. It's about your career path and what you want from him. And on the point of Brentford, would he go? Brendan, would he go to a Man City or a Chelsea or even a Newcastle now that they've got all these new funds? Like you say, I don't think Liverpool. I think that's broken. But I, with all due respect to Brendan, I think there'll always be a bigger manager available. There's always going to be someone in European football who's been there and done it a little bit more than him and been a little bit more successful than him in a different country, maybe done it in a couple of different countries. And I think he would always face that. And that's why, I'll say it again and again and again. He's at the best place he could be. I think this is the best club he'll manage in his career, personally. Who knows what's happened in 10 years' time, because he's probably got a long managerial career ahead of him. But right now, he's in the best place he could possibly be. And I think what we would hope for as Leicester fans is that, we do realise that we haven't got the backing, and we don't just, spend the money that the other clubs have spent. And I think you're happy with, top 4, top 6, maybe top 7. And then every year or so having a bit of a spike and winning a cup and maybe challenging for the league. And I think that's, where we are at a club at the moment. We're not going to dominate the Premier League. I don't see in the any near future. We're not going to go in loads and loads of cups, but I think every now and then we can pop our heads up and say, hey, by the way, we're still here, and go and nick something and go and win something, and push a league title, win a close one season. And I think if we do that, I think as fans we should be happy.
Yeah, and I think the fact, like we said, he's been to Liverpool, so he's actually been to the big clubs. He's seen. I mean, he was a slip away possibly from winning the title for Liverpool, so he knows what's expected at those clubs. Yes, all right, what he managed at Celtic, but it was Celtic. There's no Rangers, there. But yeah, I like you say, I think it is a marriage made in heaven for both him and us. And I think I've got to say that a lot of managers, I think, would have used this speculation to have kept quiet and maybe tried to get a bigger contract out of the club. But by coming out and saying what he said, the owners are going to be there, well, we don't need to give him a new contract at the moment. So all power to Brendan, even more so for saying that. And talking of Brendan, keep your eye out for this today. If you remember me saying every Tuesday on the BBC Leicester City homepage, you will find me. I know you weren't expecting necessarily to find me, but I'm there. And they allow me to do a blog every Tuesday, a couple of 100 words. I can't do a match review. And my blog this week, funnily enough, is about Brendan saying he's stopping. I may just have mentioned the 4-2 victory as well. And that wasn't just because the lady I deal with at the BBC is a Man United fan, but Shay. But funnily enough, talking about that, let's come on to this. Leicester City 4, Manchester United 2. And I posed the question there, were Man United that bad, or were Leicester just too good for them? And it actually goes back to a question that we were asked earlier. And guys, don't forget to get your questions in the comments for Julian later, and we'll ask a few of those out. Anthony says here as well, Man United fans are saying Leicester was lucky and they should have won the game. I haven't seen that, to be honest with you, because most Man United fans that I've been in, I've been on a couple of Man United shows and I've had Man United fans. I had two on our review show last night and they were saying Leicester were good, but according to all the media, they're only interested in how bad Man United are more than how good Leicester were.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it was a little bit of both, having watched it and watched back and seen some of the commentary and feedback afterwards. But what I saw on Saturday was we pressed a lot better than I think we have, in the last few games, to be honest with you. Obviously, there was the change in formation, which we've talked about at great length in the past few weeks, of where we were last season, forced into a formation and how well it worked for us, and should we go back to it? And I think that was an important bit, and where Maddison fits into that, and obviously Perez following him in. But we really pressed aggressively, very high up the pitch, and it meant that we were creating chances high up the pitch. And I think, however good a team are, and however good players are individually, when they're losing the ball close to their own goal, it makes them nervous and a bit unsure. And do they really want to play out from the back as much as they normally do, because they know that they're taking a little bit with a risk with the way it was quite relentless in the way we went after them, and it didn't really stop for the 90 minutes. I mentioned Jamie Vardy, earlier getting the free kick in injury time when he made a good 30-yard dash and got his body in the way of Wan-Bissaka and, obviously generated the foul, which was brilliant. But that little bit there showed the sort of team spirit of how we played and pressed throughout the 90 minutes.
It was, and we didn't. We were first to every first ball. We were first to every second ball. Yeah, they caught us out with their second goal, but not every team's going to be able to produce a pass like that through to Rashford, and not every player is Rashford going to score. But it was the Leicester from last season.
It was. It looked a lot more like it, and we have stuttered so much this season. And again, I think we've talked about it before. Not just the formation, changes in personnel. Obviously, the changes in formation bring changes in personnel as well. There are certain players who can fit into one but can't fit into the other as much as they would like. Classic example. Harvey Barnes, who's a wide player, he doesn't really fit in out. So we played on Saturday. Can he play in that number 10 role? But Maddison's got that spot, and Perez did great when he come on in the same spot, which I think I said that last season when he was playing out on the right. He's actually, I think, more of a number 10 than anything else. And he, whether it was a one-off or not, I hope it's not, because he's a very talented player. He's been getting a lot of stick, and his probably performances have not been where he personally wants them to be. But he came on and put a shift in and got 2 assists late on in the game. So, lot to do with the formation, I thought. A lot to do with the way we pressed. Importantly for me is, do we go on and do it again? And I can't wait for the game tomorrow just to see if there's, I know it's only the second game after that great win, but start to put some consistency in the way we defend, the way we attack, and the performances as a whole.
I said on the show earlier that we did a preview of tomorrow's game, but I'd hate to be in Brendan's shoes now, because, like you said, and we'll come on to in a second, no Lookman, no Barnes in the team, and we still won, and Perez did well. And does he stick with the 3-5-2, or does he go back to 4-4-2 or 4-2? Who'd be a manager?
Yeah, but I mean, I think we went to a back three against Millwall and won. I know it was Millwall and it was the cup, but then it was a back three on Saturday. I think the massive difference in all that is Johnny Evans. I think he's just got. I think he makes the players around him very comfortable and probably happier on the pitch than when he's not there. I still feel Sayunchu's still not at his best, but I think the calming influence of Evans next to him, and interesting that Amatu, was preferred to Vestergaard. And again, I think that all comes down to the influence that Johnny has on the pitch. So, really interesting. I mean, for me, I'd be amazed if he doesn't go with it tomorrow night, unless there's something tactically about Moscow that we need to, change something. Because I would want to see us now stick with the same formation, go into the weekend with the same formation, the game after, and put some runs together and find out if that is the best way for us to play. Because it might not be. It might be a little bit of a flash in the pan, but it didn't feel like it, and it certainly didn't look like it the way we dominated on Saturday.
I mean, if we go back to the Nigel Pearson's championship winning team, you could pick that team and that formation 4 or 5 weeks in advance, because he played week 1, week 2, week 3. He was playing the same players and the same team every week. I know there probably wasn't there's probably just as many games because you're in a bigger division. Then when we came up, he was chopping and changing in the Premier League that first season up, and we struggled. So yes, those players that played have got the position. They've played, they've won. It's their shirts to lose now. And we just talk Barnes and Lookman. I mean, could you imagine, certainly with Barnes, just putting in that sort of performance without Barnes being on the pitch?
No, I know, and it is. It's quite a harsh sort of reality for some of the guys, because they don't really fit into that. It's like I say, Perez and Maddison can both play number 10 at the moment you're going to start Maddison. If you were looking at that formation, would you play Barnes up front or look at him as a number 10? Well, you know, there's no way you're going to get with three of those. So does he play up front, which I don't quite see. I think Lookman could play up top. So, you know, there's something there for him. But then he's got, you know, a lot of competition with obviously Iniacho, Vardy and Daka. So it's really difficult all around. But it's, as we said the other week, it was, you know, I feel a bit like Man United at the minute. They've got these 11 great players and they all want to fit them into something and it's not working. So what you have to do as a manager is be really brave, have a really frank chat with a couple of your so-called, you know, what you'd call your regular first 11 and say, I'm trying this. And you just, you know, you have to pull you out for the time being. And, you know, if it works, let's see where it takes us. And, you know, I think looking on Saturday, it seemed Brendan sort of had that a bit in mind and the formation was good, the personnel was good, the substitutes were good, you know, substitutions he made were good, and it just felt like a perfect day on the pitch.
Did. Let's talk about, I mean, I'm just looking at Garth Cook's team of the week here for the BBC, and Soyuncu makes it in, which is really good to see because he had a bad start to the season. He's the only Leicester player in there, which surprised me, but, you know, let's have a look at from the Leicester side. Amati, who's had his critics, including myself in the past, brilliant game. Maddison, he hasn't played well all season. Turned it on against Man United. And Perez, you know what my thoughts are on Perez, but hey, hands up. He had a brilliant game, 2 assists when he came on. Everything just clicked, and you know, players that have struggled seem to just come alive.
They did, and this is where I'll sort of flip it on its head and just say, you know, that Man United didn't particularly press with any intent. They didn't really press together. You'd find one player closing the ball down but not getting backed up by his mate, so he gets picked off and he's looking around at his teammates thinking, where are you? It was all the way they set up a bit disjointed, and you know, it looks like something that they don't really seem to work on. And I think that's where Maddison in particular found the joy in the fact that if he came off short, there was no one coming with him out the back line, there was no one in the midfield dropping in and picking him up, so he was getting it quite comfortably. And there's a couple of times where, I mean, for me, Tielemans at the minute, one of the best centre mids in the league. I think he'd get in any team, and him again he's in that too, in the slightly, you know, what you'd class as maybe a little bit of a holding role, but he was breaking forward and just finding that gap, and it just seemed like between the back line and the midfield for Man United there was no communication, there was no one pulling anyone around, and you know, the urgency to pick, you know, opposition players up, and I think we found it quite easy to come through them, which is where you create your chances. Because what you want with Maddison is you want him ahead of the midfield, looking at the back four, Vardy, Iniacho, whoever else it is, making the runs, the wide players making the runs, and he can feed those balls in all day long. And that's, you know, what he did Saturday, and he does that fantastically well. And this is where I'm hoping that it's not just that Man United were bad, because this is how I'd like to see them playing every week. But it's that thing of, if on another week someone is getting a bit close to him, that's where he gets snuffed out of games. So, like I say, hopefully it continues. But I do think Man United played a reasonable part in their own downfall.
It did, and I'm just looking on the Sky homepage here for the Premier League. That the headline is Gary Neville's damning view of Man United, babies and baggy. The next headline is Gary Neville again. Man United lack identity. Jamie Carragher, better manager needed. All about Man United, and you know, nothing to say that maybe we didn't let them play very well. Maybe it was, you know, we did control the game, and yes, obviously if the other team don't, you know, play very well, it helps. But surely in there was some of the fact that we didn't let them.
Well, I think you're right there, Chris. So I mean, I would describe that as that when we were defending, we had a massive influence on how they played. Now, when we were attacking, I think they had a bit of an influence on how we played. So you can turn that on its head. But what we should get credit for is the way that we pressed them. We didn't let them play. We drew them into mistakes time and time again and created quite a few chances from it. And that we should get all the praise in the world. I sort of do see it on the flip side that, you know, they helped us a little bit in the sort of very lackluster. There's no aggression whatsoever in the pressing. But we indeed controlled the game without the ball, which is unusual.
Yeah, and good stats. It's always, I know my colleague Brad doesn't like stats, but we've won the last 3. I mean, we've only won up until yesterday. I think we'd only won 3 games against Man United in any Premier League season at all. So that's 3 in 30. We've now actually won 4, obviously, but they've been the last 3 games we've beaten them. There was the game at the end of last season in the FA Cup, and the one before that we drew. And of course, we stopped Man United's away league record of 29 unbeaten games.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the minute, and for the last couple of years, I think talked about this last season. They always conceded first, but then went on to win. And I always felt it was more the fact that they had some really good individuals who could pull something out of the bag that dragged them over the line, rather than any tactical brilliance or any way they played. Like Neville says, have they got an identity? We all knew that Alex Ferguson was a classic 4-4-2, so attacking. The wingers went, they were so high up the pitch. The way they played was really exciting football and great to watch. There was no holding back, certainly. And they had the players to do that. And I think what Gary's alluding to is he doesn't see how, Ollie wants them to play. Does he just put a good team of 11 on the pitch and say, go and win the game, lads? I'm sure there's a bit more to it than that, but you can't actually see it when you watch them. You watch the highlights, you watch them live. You can't see a methodology of how they are intending to win a game, and you can with most clubs. And I think that's where, Gary's, frustrations are on that.
And you when Ollie came in, he'd taken Mulder to the Norwegian title of first team, time that they've ever done it, etc., etc. But he came in with very little managerial experience. He hadn't, set the world alight with Cardiff when he was in the Premier League before, and of course they went down. But he came in and he did a job. He was on a temporary contract, and then he came in and he did sort of get everybody back on. I think it was Mourinho he took over from, and he'd lost the dressing room. He got that dressing room back. He was given the job before his temporary contract expired, and then they started. That's kind of ended, and they started to lose. But you asked the question: do the players trust him?
Yeah, I think so. So for me, like you say, Mulder done okay. Cardiff, not so good, difficult job. But didn't really look to change things while he was there or affect anything. And then he's coming into one of the biggest jobs, in English football, European football. And I think what he did do is, like you said, so there was such a negative sort of atmosphere around the club with Mourinho. I mean, the thing with Luke Shaw, I mean, the way he plays is very pragmatic, and you've got some wonderfully talented players there. And I think what Ollie did is sort of came in and released the shackles and would have spoke to the players in a totally different way to Mourinho, and probably lifted the mood and that. And we talk about, when a new manager takes over and the results suddenly turn around, and sometimes it is that feel good factor. And I think we got that. And then, as time goes on, it's got to be more about the manager. And the problem he's got now for me is that he has got world-class players who, obviously Ronaldo has been at the top of the sport worldwide since we can remember. And then you've got the players like Cavani, again, who are, unbelievable players who've played at top level consistently, for years. And I know certainly in Ronaldo, he'll be a player who will turn around and demand from the manager, which is not often you get that in football. The players look to the manager, he's the gaffer, but with a player like that, he's so iconic, and he's not very good at hiding his frustrations. We've seen already this season, and I'm sure he won't have any problem inventing his frustrations. And I'm not saying he'll do it publicly, but certainly behind closed doors. And again, that is another pressure that a manager doesn't want. You talk about the media pressure, the pressure, with Steve Bruce, new owners coming in, the media's on his back, the fans are on his back, not in a good league position. But then for your own players to capitulate, then that really becomes a massive problem. As we talked about Mourinho at Man United. So, and it seems to me like that he's got one or two players who'll be looking at him and saying, "Well, what do we do now? You're the manager. You tell us what we do to make this situation better." And it was really, really poor on Saturday, and soundly beaten. And there was no luck about it from our point of view. It was just absolutely, we've given away the second goal that Rashford scores is. It's bad defending. The back three weren't together. and it was a poor one to concede just from one direct ball. And other than that, there wasn't much of a spark, from Man United. So we thoroughly deserved the win. No doubts about that whatsoever.
Do you think Ollie wanted Ronaldo? I mean, he'd pretty much got a good team. If they hadn't got him, he would have almost certainly probably ended up at Man City. Was it a case that they couldn't allow that to happen, and that's why they got him?
I think, if I'm honest, we'll never know unless Ronaldo brings the book out and he's very honest with it. But it is a bit of a conundrum, and would he have wanted? I think in his head he would have wanted him, and further down the line that sort of thought might change. Like I say, if things don't improve, but I think the again another feel good factor of Ronaldo coming back to the club, where for me he made his name, and I certainly think that Man United educated him and made him the player that he became, because I think he was so frustrated in his first season there, and they very literally seemed to get hold of him and put him on the start of the journey. I mean, he's an incredible athlete, and obviously his discipline and his self-motivation are second to none. But I really think they put him on the right path in those early days. And, like he said, he's gone and done what he's done. He's come back. It's such a great story. I probably think he did want him, but, not knowing what that brings if there's no success with bringing him in, because you think it's a massive plus. But then if things aren't going right, the other week he was on the bench, and I think did they get beat, or did they got beat, or they drew? They got beat, I think. And all of a sudden, it's the first question: why is he on the bench? Sir Alex Ferguson makes comments about it. Play your strongest team. All these things that he wouldn't have expected, all of a sudden popping up, because if they're winning every game, no one would give a monkeys whether he started or not. No, but it's as soon as the negativity sort of comes into it and the results don't come as you expect them to do, then people are really looking to find the reasons of why it's not happening. And more often than not, that points to the manager.
Being the old git that I am, I remember, like I said, and I touched on this earlier. Pre-Alex Ferguson, I can remember when Liverpool were winning everything, and Man United would go out and buy the best players available, but never won the odd FA Cup. But they never got to the success that Liverpool was trying to do. But was it, is it almost a case, and I believe it was then, that they bought players because of who they were, not what they could bring to the club? And, Man United, they've got an amazing team of individuals. You can't deny that when you look, the names you mentioned some before. But it's not a team that gels. And you can't just buy a player because, whether it's Ronaldo or Cavani or Sancho. It's, well, okay, you want me to go and buy this player, but will he fit into my plans as a manager? This is how I want to play. And that player doesn't fit into that, so I'm just buying him for, because he's a name. Do you think there's a bit of that with Man United? Because they're certainly, like I say, they're not a team as such at the moment, are they?
No, there's a few puzzling things for myself. I mean, the biggest one, which is massive for me, is Van der Beek. They broke the necks to sign him. They've paid a very, very sizable fee for him, and he was a very, very informed player. Ajax can play defensive mid, attacking mid, very versatile. And I've barely seen him apart from the odd cup game here and there, and that surprises me in the people that are playing in his position, which I think he's better than. I wonder where his head's at right now. I know apparently they had talks in the summer, and that Ollie convinced him to stay. I don't know what he told him to make him stay. I mean, that's something that Ollie must really excel at. Because for me personally, I'd have been saying I need to go and play football. He's just had a year off his career. Now, as we talk about all the time, the money compensates for that. But there's got to be more to it, and that's the biggest one for me. And then Sancho comes in. He's on the bench for a couple of games when he brings him in, and it's like, for me, in the old days, he brought a star player in. He was on the team sheet, and whoever his place he took, it was tough. That was the nature of the beast. Whereas now they seem to want to introduce them gently, feed them in. Well, Sod that. Get your best players on that pitch, and that's why you should be talking to Ronaldo. Can you play 90 minutes on Saturday? Can you play 90 minutes on the Tuesday afterwards? Because if you can, I'm playing you. Do you feel you need a break because you know your body better than I do? And if not, for me, he's one of the best players in the world. He should be playing week in, week out. And that's the same with Van der Beek and the same with Sancho. Like you say, the other one for me is Greenwood, who for me is a central striker, but they farm him out either side because they've got so-called bigger and better players inside. For me, I'd be saying to him, learn from Cavani, learn from Ronaldo. You're not going to learn from two better. And that is something that you need to be aiming for this season. And on those games where there are a couple of goals up, they can bring him on up there and give the other two, a bit of a rest and rotate it like that. And I feel that he needs to start rotating a few positions. And the better managers do that without, the disruption in the changing room. But it looks like he can't.
Talking about going up to players and saying, "Are you ready to play?" The rumours are that that's what he did with Maguire, and you could see Maguire. Yes, no Man United fans, if you're watching, you can't have your 80 million back, even if you kept the receipt. I'm sorry, it was a one-off sale. But they've been saying this a lot. It was his first game back from a long-term injury. He was off form. He was at fault for a couple of the goals. Certainly for the first goal when he had the ball taken off him, he stood there waiting for the ball to come to him. So, it's good that he wants to play. It's good that he wanted to be on the pitch. But again, Ollie should have had the kahunas to say, "No, I'm not picking you. I know you're the captain. I know you're probably our best defender, but you're not 100% fit for this game."
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things on that, Chris. For me, I think one that I think they struggle in that position. For one, I mean, no one else who's Bailly, Lindelof, not one of them for me has like stepped up and I've thought, oh yeah, he's going to be here a few years and he's going to be playing week in, week out. And I think that's what he sees in Harry, and that's why he probably would have rushed him back. But it's difficult when you're a player, when you've been out injured, to come back into a game when I don't know what games he could have played behind the scenes to get him up to speed. And I've done it myself where you feel fit, you play a reserve team game and you coast through it, but that's a reserve team game and you get in the first team and literally after 15, 20 minutes, you're thinking, oh my God, what have I put myself through today? And whether that was the case for Harry on Saturday, for the goal, he sort of hesitated, and that, is he thinking he's not quick enough to get there? It was just really bad decision making, but then it cost him. And again, that'll eat on his mind. He's back at his old club. There's obviously furore when he left. He went under a cloud, and we're always delighted if he doesn't play well against us. And he sets us off. On the road back after we've conceded. So. And then an afternoon he probably wouldn't have found enjoyable at all, especially when the result played out like it did. But I think in Harry and Ollie's defence, I would say that it would have been desperate for him to play with not many other options, in that position for such a big game. Yeah.
Good evening to Melina. How the devil are you? Thanks for joining us. Hope you've got some clothes on that fit you now. And I'm not being rude there. And I think it might be that I'm old, because she did have a profile picture up earlier and she had a lovely woolen jumper on, but it looked like 3 or 4 sizes too big for her. She literally has this huge jumper and this little head popping out the top. So I hope you got some clothes on that fit you. That said, I have to be honest with you. We need to say this for a few weeks. If you have a look, there's a picture of Julian on the internet. Don't worry, it's not that bad. Don't worry. You see this shirt that I'm wearing in honour of Julian here, that he wore the blue version of this. And there is a picture, and I think you whether it's at Wembley possibly, you look like the shirt's 2 or 3 sizes too big for you there. Was it that time?
I think it's the same one you're wearing now, Chris.
No, that wouldn't fit me. I need a bigger one than that now, I tell you.
No, well, I think the game's changed, because in those baggy shirts with a thing, and you look like now, and even if my son sees some pictures, I've got that picture up downstairs actually in my office, and it's walking out, and I think to say you can see the tension in my face is is an understatement. But
Yes.
the baggy shirts and shorts were all the thing. And when we went up into the Premier League, and they were even baggier. And you look now, and everyone's got these. I mean, to be fair, I never had the figure, so I'm glad they were baggy in those days. I dodged a bullet there.
I know. So I think it's Tottenham that go for the really tight clinging tops. But do you remember the shorts? I mean, when you see some of these like games from ITV Retro, they're re-showing the big match revisited. Some of the shorts that people are wearing, I tell you what, I don't know how they could run with wearing those without chapping the legs. I'll tell you. But yes, they were baggy. Let's put it that way. Last question of this before we go on to sort of any questions anybody's got. Remember, get your questions in now if you've got any. Johnny Evans, we said what a great difference he makes. He lasted 88 minutes, came off with a bit of cramp at the end, which was understandable. He played 88 minutes on his first game back. 3 games this week. You've got Man United Saturday, you've got Moscow Wednesday, you've got Brentford on Sunday. I don't think Johnny Evans is necessarily going to play all 3. So A, he's back from injury, and B, he's a little bit older. You can guess what's going to come here, can't you? So do you rest him for the game against Spartak Moscow, or do you play him and then rest him against Brentford?
Personally, I rest him tomorrow and I play him against Brentford. I think maybe the 2 games would come quite close together for him, as part of his rehabilitation and getting back to full fitness. We're in a difficult position in that Europa League now, and I don't want to sound negative, but it's going to be a tough ask just to get out of the group, and then it becomes about targets and what the manager's looking for, in the league and the league position, and do we build on what we did on Saturday? Brentford's going to be a really tough game on at the weekend, and make no mistake about that. And I do think I'd rather have him the longer rest and do the rehab in between and make sure he's all right. He'll be on the bike or what have you with the physio this week, and make sure he's at full strength for that, rather than risking him, quite close. I'm not saying a close apart for a younger player, but where he is in his career, I think the longer rest would do him a lot better. And again, it's the manager. If the manager thinks we can qualify from the group and go and win, the Europa, and it's a serious thing, and obviously you've got the prize of the Champions League, then he has to play tomorrow. But for me, I think I would go the other way and stick with the league.
Do you go for Vestergaard then? I mean, he's taken some stick recently, and we're very good as Leicester fans at giving stick out before players had a chance. We all remember Ryan Bennett when he came in. I personally don't think he particularly did anything too wrong, but we didn't take to him. And Vestergaard's he's had a poor couple of games, but then, to be honest with you, recently, who hasn't? And I think he's big enough to step up to this game, though.
Yeah, I do. And I mean, I think, in the games that he's had, it's not always been in a back 3. And like I say, I hope we stick to that formation tomorrow. If you just stuck him in the middle of Sayuncu and Amati, it might make the world of difference to him, because I know he's had some tough games playing in the back 4, but he's also been playing in a team that's struggling. And that's a massive thing, for anyone on the pitch, but particularly a defender, if you're left a bit exposed at times, and it really can affect the way you play. So for me, I would want to keep the formation exactly the same. If we felt it was going to be a tougher game, would you drop a number 10 and put an extra player in the middle of the park? But I felt like Tielemans and Samari were superb at the weekend, and we should stick with it. And then it's whether, do you start Perez and bring Maddison out because, it's a like for like, very, very strong? Do you give Daka a run? There's lots of, opportunities, I feel, that, we could really, get a really fresh team out tomorrow night and still be like super competitive. I know we need to win the game, but I think there's obviously management of the season as well. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. But I'm hoping like we stick with this formation just for the near future and just see if it can give us the roads that it did last season and what it seemingly could, give us this season as well.
Yeah, looks like we might end up being Southampton's B team soon, because we've been linked with a 27-year-old. Oh, here we go. Elanusi from Southampton, us and Arsenal. So I say, who knows? But I'm going to ask you this question, and I think it's a genuine question. But as you have, of course, had your moments. You were centre spread in the women's own magazine, or August 1990 something. I think it was. You were the centre spread there. Them staples must have hurt where they were. That's all I can say. Terry says here, not naming any individual, but what is your opinion on hard-up Prem players having to take other jobs like modelling to make ends meet? I presume somebody has been modelling recently in the papers, have they?
I've not seen that. I mean, like, I suppose there are, Premier League footballers are a bit like pop stars. They'll have a load of hangers on and people around them. And, I know in our day we did a little bit of very, very, very low level calendar modelling, which was the Leicester City calendar.
Oh, yes. Oh,
yes,
hang on.
Yeah.
This is all news to me. I
think I was on the 13th month of the year, so I'm not sure if I made the final.
I'm going to have to give you your own screen here, sir.
But, if it's not affecting them, obviously the training and stuff like that, I think managers are quite in control of the players, a lot more than they were, in my day. They're a lot more in control of what they're doing, what they're eating, what they're drinking, and all that kind of thing. So yeah. I think everything's planned, and it's not such a big problem.
I mean, do you think, just taking on from that point, and in all seriousness, we always say like all these youngsters, they're getting too much money too soon, they don't know how to handle it. I don't think it's so bad that maybe these days with the drinking and the gambling, because I think the clubs have got people there that that can help if anybody goes to them with these sort of problems. But do you think the heads are turned away from football? I mean, we spoke the other week about players that aren't getting in the team regularly. There's no reserve team or anything like that to occupy them. And once they finish training, they have got all that spare time. And I mean, back in the day, players would be off down the pub having a fag and having a game of snooker. These days, it's down to the modelling agency, like you say, posing for hair pictures and bringing out your own deodorant. Do you think there is a bit of that where their heads are getting turned a little bit?
I think it's down to the individual and where they are. I mean, if they're lucky enough to have that ability and get paid that money, but if mentally it's not the main focus in life, and that can happen. You've players who are with so much ability can stumble through into a career, but if it doesn't mean everything to them, you've got other players who have to work a lot harder to get to the same level, but it's that mentality that carries them through. You look at, and I'm not dissing him anyway, because I do think he's a fantastic player, Jordan Henderson. Model professional. He's not a Ronaldo. He doesn't do 20 Steph overs, but I think he's a great player in a mix of a great team, and he's done well for England as well. So, there are players like that who I think are a bit, quite focused, and then, you get the others who don't seem to be, and the money then does become a problem because they can afford not maybe to walk away, or they can afford to go and do something that they might not be doing, or that other people don't get the opportunity to do. So I think these days, though, with the clubs, they do have a lot of staff that deal with that kind of thing. And I think, I know they have a lot of staff that deal with social media, see what the players are doing on social media and all that kind of thing. The game itself is just a completely different animal to what it was with all these distractions in. And you just hope that as young pros, they can get their head down and forge a career.
Thank you so much, as always, Julian. I'm going to go off and try and find the calendar for that year when you were in it. I am thinking full Monty here. I don't know how.
I think I was on the cutting room floor. I think the editor was a bit harsh, but I can't remember. To be fair.
It was a cold month, was it? you did December. That was what it was. We'll find that. We'll dig that out for next week, I'm sure, in some form or another. Julian, I've got that thought in my mind. I'm going to go to bed with a thought now of you doing a full Monty on the calendar. I'm not sure if I don't think that's going to be a good thing, to be honest with you. But mate,
time's a great healer, Chris. I'll see you next week.
Take care, Julian. As always, thank you so much.
No worries,
care.
And
don't get your wife out the skip.
Yeah.
Take care. All the best, mate.
Cheers.
Thank you. Oh God, I tell you what, I'm going to go try and find that calendar. Leave it with me. You know me. Thanks to Julian, as always. Great to have his. I live my favourite show of the week. Always expect to do the shows. talking with an ex-professional. Julian gives up his time, and it's really, we're really grateful for him to do that. But it does just put another perspective. Maisie's back. You see, you talk about full Monty on a calendar, and Maisie appears. I'm not saying anything, but Maisie, if I can get a copy, I'll send it to you. And it wasn't me, honestly, it was Julian. I wouldn't need a picture on 1 month. I would need a picture on January, February, and March, and that'd just be for my stomach. Before you think I'm being rude, Melina says she still wants the Premier League trophy. Do you mean that thing at the back there? That I believe, as I did say earlier, I think Arsenal's version of it comes with all the cobwebs included. Great show. Thank you very much, Aaron. Brilliant. Melina, thank you very much for that. You're doing so much better than Leicester on the pitch. Ask Man United about that. Ask Man United. Melina, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I've got to go and try and sort this out now with YouTube because at the moment I can't get my money. But hey, we've got this coming up tomorrow, so you've not got rid of me just yet. This is what's coming up. It is the European post-match show. Well, I've just written all over myself. That was clever, wasn't it? It will be about 6:15. We've got 3:30 UK time, mate. Guys, 3:30 in the afternoon. I think some people may just come back from lunch with a bit of food poisoning. Sorry, boss. Oh, I feel I've got to go home. I really have. Yeah. So 3:30 tomorrow. We'll be live at 6:15-ish to talk about the game. And let's hope we're talking about another performance like we have just seen against Man United. Melina, I'm glad you're better and you're getting better from your illness and your hospital. Great to have you back, and thank you so much for the donation there. And Terry, thanks, Julian. He's gone, mate. He went before. Keep up. But guys, thanks so much. That was my sloppy second show. So I can only say that now because Julian's gone. Twice in a night. Who knew I could do that? I better go before I say something I shouldn't, should I? I'll see you tomorrow night, guys. Thanks very much for joining in. Thanks, Melina, for the donation. Thanks, Terry, for the question. Thanks, Maisie, for popping in. And David, everybody else, thanks very much. See you tomorrow night after the game. Good night.
That's all, folks.
Hello, Matt Elliott here. Be sure to watch Leicester Till I Die TV on YouTube and follow all them social media platforms for the latest updates and news on Leicester City Football Club.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform
Or ask your smart speaker.
to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like, follow, and join in now.